Good evening and welcome to Talking in Stations for Monday, July 26th. Welcome to the show. I am joined by Nick Bison. It's a short group tonight. Nick, say hello.
Hello from Nick. How's it going, everybody?
Good. And I'm Rundle All-Nighter. And it's going to be a little bit of a shorter show. Going to try and just set up the week. There's not a lot of news. Probably patch day tomorrow is the most exciting thing. There's a few things coming. One main thing. We'll just kind of keep it short, maybe take some questions from the audience, just to generally talk about Eve and get our week started. So let's do a couple quick little news items. If you are a Pochven person living in Pochven and you are constantly worried about shipping stuff in and out, PushX is now serving Pochven. So that'll be interesting to see how well they do there, and if they get kind of free reign of coming in and out of the area, or if the ganking of PushX services is going to increase. It'll be interesting to see. Nick, do you use PushX ever?
No, I was an old Red Frog user. I haven't used the PushX folks yet.
Yeah, I hear they're pretty good. Pochven seems dangerous though, going in and out though, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that works. So
Actually, should be kind of fun to see what routes they're going to end up, because I imagine they can vary it up rather nicely.
yeah, it seems like a lot of ways to get in and move around, right? So yeah, it would be interesting. So there's a Reddit post. There was a Twitter post. If you guys are interested, just search PushX and Eve online, and you'll find it, and you can go. Basically, they're going to service the MP stations, all the NPC stations except Nargia, Kino, and Archie. There's a volume is 12,500 meters cubed or 62,500 meters cubed. So those are the Cloaky industrials and the blockade runner industrial max cargoes, right? Obviously, there's no jump freighters. Collateral limit 5 billion, and so then they got some additional rates for you as well. So if you need,
I was going to say, I can't really imagine the PushX folks opening this up if they didn't have a solid plan, because they're not in the business to lose ISK.
no, and those the blockade runner and the Cloaky industrial, there's, it's a little easier. It's not like you're moving jump freighters with massive align times and stuff, right? So those ships are kind of designed for this service. But I would imagine they've worked out how they're going to do it, and maybe even worked out some standings, maybe even, or worked out some sort of negotiations of let us pass. So they've been hard at work, obviously. So if you are a person who tries to follow the lore, there is some interstellar correspondence, world news sort of stuff. We'll cover that later on in the week. Ashra Khan will probably come in and talk about that, or we'll have someone else. There's a news article, the Galactic Hour News Roundup, and it's the Inner Circle Security Summit reduces EDUMCOM funding. So there's lots of interesting things there. Maybe that'll actually play out to some events or some real happenings in the game if you're not a lore or role player type person. But there's a big long article if you want to read through that. Basically, the funding across the big four has been decreased, so maybe there's some impact to the non-role playing player coming up. Any ideas, Nick, on that? Are you a role player? I'm not a big role player, but I love listening to it, but I don't take it in myself. I don't play it myself in that sense, at least in terms of the lore. In terms of Eve, I'm always Rundle All-Nighter, and so I role play in that concept. But what about you, Nick?
Well, my version of role play is, the little industrial guy, try to be friendly to the folk around me, and have a good time, invite them out to mine or run a few missions, try and help out some newer guys. And that's kind of the extent of my role play. But as far as with the different factions or empires, no, that hasn't been my style, even though I find it quite interesting. And if I were to jump into it, probably do it as a Galente, because that's kind of where I hang out.
Right. Yeah, the role play. Over the years, I've played various games, and role playing I toy with it. I kind of enjoy it to a degree, but I don't get super into the lore. I just try to role play in the element of, the base element of the game. So like Eve Online, um, you know, I'm a capsuleer with some swagger, and I like PvP, and I'm always my avatar. I'm me. One of the reasons I don't go on camera, which drives Matt all nuts, but um, although I have been, met in person and stuff at various, back when I was in Lost and Eve, at various um, get-togethers and stuff like that. So people have met me, but in general, I just try to be, that's me, and I play that way, and I kind of have a bit of a backstory that I stick to and stuff like that. But it's centered around my character, not that I'm a Mimitar loyalist, or certainly I'm a Caldari loyalist. I think Caldari is the best, but I don't get too deep into it in terms of playing it. But I love listening to it. So there's a neat long story. We'll get some people to come on and talk about that. I'm interested to know how many people generally are role players. I always like to find out. I think it's a minority, but let's get to the real big story of what's happening tomorrow. So it's patch day tomorrow, and the ESS keys are coming, right? So those keys are going to drop, and start getting ready. I guess that's what 20 trillion ISK is available. Get your dream team together and start going for lots of ISK.
There's going to be some real interesting gameplay because obviously they're not going to drop the sites. I guess are the low sec sites that you run the site to get the key. I mean, there's not going to be enough keys or sites dropped out on day one, so that there's 20 trillion ISK worth of potential. I'm guessing it's going to be metered out slowly initially because this is something they want to obviously keep going for a while. This isn't an event; it's flat out new gameplay that's appears to be designed to last.
Right. Well, I mean, I what I don't know about actually, um, is are the keys going? Can you contract them? Are they going to be able to be sold on contract? I'm assuming there's not going to be sold on the open market. It would be a contract situation, but that's what I'm going to look for, is like, how are the keys going to be really distributed into the market? If you're going to go to the trouble of getting a key, are you going to really use it, or are you going to try and sell it? And what will that price be?
I think
Yeah,
we can use an example of like Fraternity and their plans, because Noros made that announcement and we had Rich Richmond do a fantastic job of translating it for us. And it seems like their plan is for some of the regions that they own, their members will be able to use the keys that they harvest. And then for other regions, basically the Alliance is putting up open market orders in a specific system. And they've instructed other people to come and sell the keys there so that the Alliance can then put on big old Alliance fleets and go collect all of that ISK.
Right. And
I,
by the way,
by the
we're
way,
joined by,
that's Artemis. Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say, we're joined
Hi,
by Artemis,
everyone.
the voice from beyond here. So welcome, Artemis, to the show. Thanks for giving that. Yeah. So I knew a little bit about that way, but that's is everyone going to follow suit? The random person getting a key, are they going to try and follow with the open orders? Are they going to put it up on themselves? It's just going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Will there be price spikes? I don't know. It's kind of exciting. 20 trillion ISK is a lot of moolah.
It is indeed. I'm also very curious the timing of this with the announcement on the 24th, where basically all of the various Pappy groups who had gone over to their previous space, had gone back to crabbing or reinforcing their own personal infrastructure, are now moving their supers and titans back down towards the Delft Theater. Does that open up opportunities for independent alliances, even independent capsuleers, to come into that space and steal more than they otherwise would be able to if those alliances hadn't have just moved all their supers and all of their combat pilots down to Delve?
I
Well,
think in the old days that would be a major concern. I'm absolutely with you, but with the number of jump clones that you can have, leaving back a fleet of a cache of ships and being able to jump to it is quite convenient. Now, obviously, then there's the cooldown after a jump, so that's the downside.
well, if you have your death clone set up correctly, it's As long as your one-way jump is fruitful and does the purpose, you can at least get back to the Delve Theater or vice versa, whatever direction you're jumping. You can manage it. If you have to jump back and forth more than twice in a day, then you're a little bit screwed. But
Oh, we also got a note that Gobbins also mentioned that Horde is going to buy back ESS keys. So that's in addition, I guess, to Noros with the frat folk.
So it seems like there's a sort of null block meta of your alliance is going to set up orders to buy keys. A certain portion of the ISK that is in your alliance's spaces banks are going to go to the alliance. Another portion is open to the members. And then there's going to be everyone who's not currently a member of null blocks trying to see what they can steal away from these larger entities.
so, did you guys on a previous show talk about where the majority of the ISK is? Did I hear it is kind of out in the east, right?
Well, yeah, east, obviously the southwest, also because that's been going on for a while. But from what Kenneth was mentioning, it seems to be concentrated in like 4 or 5 regions is where the big money is at.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I know Delve's probably not going to be a hotbed for ESS heists right off the bat. I'd rather probably go somewhere else if it was me thinking of doing that. So
Yeah, I mean, definitely with multiple factions hooking and jabbing down there, it's probably not where you want to go jump in. I can see Pappy forces potentially purchasing keys for that region or regions, because I realize they cover multiples, in order to suck up some of the ISK that has been stashed away there for a while. Oh, Eldcrypt mentions Oasa, Vale, and Tribute are 3 of the big regions with deep pocket ESSs.
that's good to know. Yeah. So I mean, I've caught a few conversations, and I think it was even just last 45 minutes even, but it's been a reoccurring theme. And this is kind of how the ESS, where it's someone put it really well. It's not it's not cops and robbers, it's robbers and robbers, right? And so it's an interesting way to have done it, where if you get the keys, you can just kind of steal your own ESS and sit there and protect it and take the money. It seems a little counter to what the way I thought that CCP wanted it to be, where to invite and create PvP. But if you have your own region pretty well locked down, and you can allow someone to just go in the ESS and soak it all up without really any combat or any danger to you, then that seems counter to the reason they put this together.
I think it depends on what you mean by having your region locked down. I mean, with the filaments, with wormholes as they are, I feel like you can't gate camp like you used to be able to. You can't lock down a region by blocking all entrances to it. So if you've got a big fleet up and you're collecting these ESS keys, number one, the regions that have those high bank values are also the regions where there's a lot of high activity, which means if somebody uses a signal filament, they're probably going to end up there or near there. So I feel like if someone wants to get into where you're currently trying to extract your ISK, they're going to be able to, and you're going to have to be able to deal with them.
Yeah, very fair.
I forgot about that. The fact that you just mentioned about the signal filaments going toward a higher density area.
So you'd have to make sure, though, that you have. I mean, you're going in blind, and would you not, for an ESS heist, want to have at least some, predetermined, not some predetermined, some pre-information? You want to scout it or something? Like showing up blind to do an ESS heist seems super risky, ultra risky relative to other ways of getting there. Maybe.
I mean, certainly there's going to be some risk there, but you have to imagine there are different motivations for participating in this content. There's the motivation of you live in this space, maybe you're collecting the ISK for yourself or for your alliance, and so you feel like you're just getting back the portion of the ISK you lost from your past ratting sessions. You could also be a member of a hostile alliance, and so you're like, I don't want the people living in the space to get this ISK because I'm at war with them and I want to deny them those resources for the war effort. And then you could be the third party, the nullsec roamer, the small ganger, who's like, listen, I've got ISK. I've got ways of making ISK. I've got a wormhole somewhere. I plex my account, what have you. I'm just using this to bait a fight. I know that these people are going to fight over this because that's a lot of ISK on the line and they don't want to let me steal it. So I'm going to come in and start that timer. And I don't really care if I win it. I just care that I'm forcing these residents to come out and fight me.
Yeah, that's totally fair counterpoints to that. I think sometimes I guess for the people using the filaments, they're going to use them to get to those locations. If you're using filaments as an exit strategy, you're going to use the other kind of filament just to GTFO, right? You're not going to send yourself to the high density population zone.
Yeah, definitely. If you're trying to get out, you're probably using the Pochven filaments to
Right.
get yourself to Pochven and then straight back to HiSec.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting to see. Any guesses on how long it takes for people to steal half of the trillion, like 10 trillion? Like let's just kind of pick an arbitrary half. There's 20 trillion out there. How long does it going to take to knock out 10 trillion ISK?
I'm going to say 90 days.
90 days. Okay.
Wow, I would be surprised if it takes more than 2 weeks. I guess it all depends on how quickly they can get the keys out of LowSec. I think that's going to be the deciding factor here, because as soon as a key exists, either the alliance who's living there is going to organize a fleet to use it to extract the ISK that they feel like they own, or some pirate's going to come in and use that key to start stealing the ISK in order to bait a fight. Like, I would imagine as soon as these keys hit the market, they're going to get bought up and used. I think the limiting factor is going to be how quickly these keys can be farmed. And as a result, like, if the keys can be farmed relatively quickly, half the ISK is gone in 2 weeks. That's where my money's at.
Yeah, the reason I'm going with a longer time scale is my thought is that they're going to release, now you got to run the sites, obviously, to get the keys. And that'll be limited by not only where the sites are at, obviously in LowSec, but how many of them are going to be out there. Or in this case, my belief is how few, because I think they want to slowly roll this out so it's not just in a dump, because this is a long-term gameplay. This isn't an event. So they want it to roll on and on and on, and folks get used to it as new gameplay and a new style. That's why I'm going with the longer time.
That is definitely an interesting perspective to have on it. I think I had the opposite take on where CCP was going with this gameplay. Like, the ESS in general was more of the long-term new style, but these banks, and when the keys would be released, would be a sort of one-time event. You want to come back and really engage with this content while it lasts, because it's not going to take a while. It's going to be over quick.
Yeah, so Shen is telling us it's about a billion per 15 minutes. So some quick math on the 10 trillion means that someone is going to have to sit in an ESS for 2,500 hours. So people are going to have to sit in that long. So of course, lots of systems happening, but that is still 2,500 hours of sitting in an ESS, right?
And that's also successfully sitting there.
Successfully sitting there, right? Uninterrupted, and of course, multiple systems and multiple people. But it'll be interesting to see how quickly they can ramp up that 2,500 hours of successful ESS camping. So
it will be interesting to see, indeed. I'm very curious how the movement of these keys from LowSec to HiSec to NullSec is going to work, because the sites are going to spawn in LowSec. Somebody correct me if I'm completely off base here. And then the keys have to either go to HiSec to go to a market hub, or the person who farms them is also the person who uses them, or you're maybe a member of one of these alliances or coalitions who you have a specific market hub in your nullsec region where these keys are used. And so are we going to see some sort of increased amount of low-sec camping in order to try and catch the farmers or the keys once they've been farmed on their way back to market hubs?
Yeah, because they have to be moved. And that's one of the things I do like about it is anything that can be moved can be interdicted. So that's a good thing. God, I sound like Caleb. I miss him.
I'm trying to get the tweet here for someone. So it's Eve Online has tweeted that the ESS keys are dropping after downtime tomorrow. It is official from Eve Online. This isn't guesswork now. So that's for who was asking there, Rayo Ultra. So
There, I found the link on Twitter link and just dropped it.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to watch. I'm very curious to see what impact this has on lowsec. I wish we had some sort of lowsec faction warfare guy around who'd be talking about if their groups have any particular plans to farm these things and use them to make ISK by selling them on the market, or perhaps they're just going to, their new gameplay for the next 2 weeks is going to be hunting the people trying to farm these sites. I'd be interesting to see. It reminds me, there's a guy, and I forget his name, in here. He lives in wormhole space, and his whole thing is like he's a policeman, and he's flying around his wormhole space and trying to catch bad guys running their relic sites and data sites. And he has a whole RP thing going on with it, and a hilarious voice. But I'd be interested to see if maybe some low sec people take the same stance, and so they will leave sites up in their systems and just camp them because they know hungry players from nullsec or hungry players who like to roam nullsec are going to be coming in looking to get these keys, and this is the only place they can find them.
Yeah, it'll be for sure different, right? Because combat's different there to a degree. If you get a bunch of people from high sec or null sec who aren't quite aware of how low sec works, I mean, they might know in their head, but knowing in your head is different than having to react when someone jumps on you or does something, right? You get kind of little muscle memory about what to do and what, so you got to kind of be a little more aware. So it might make combat in low sec. In other words, more mistakes could be made, right? It's going to be easier for people who aren't normally used to low sec to make mistakes there. And that's what happens in Eve when things like this happen. And then of course mistakes is opportunity. So I think it could drive some other types of gameplay, right? So it'll be good.
Indeed. And for the audio listeners, the channel I was speaking about is called Mother Cluckers. You can search Mother Clucker Eve on YouTube to find it. It's hilarious.
Excellent. Yeah, gate gun. Someone mentioned gate guns. Exactly. All sorts of different things happening. Where do you fight? Where do you take your fight? If you just, if it's been a while since you've been there, just a whole bunch of different things could be happening, and there could be some very fun, hilarious moments. Like, shit, didn't think that. Totally forgot about that. Or, where's my bubbler? Oh crap, no bubbles. It's just stuff like that, right?
Indeed. So. Yeah, I am very, very curious the impact this is going to have on the big war going down in Delve right now. We have it all up in our chat where people are like, hey, there's this going on in T5Z. Certainly some of it's bait and trolling. But you've got to imagine for all of these various groups that are members of PAPI, they have their home space where all of their banks are saved up. Do you have the manpower to be able to do whatever it is to accomplish your goals in T5Z and in the 1DQ constellation and simultaneously protect all of your banks back at home? I don't think they do.
No, probably realistically not. I mean, that would be incredibly, I'm going to use the term manpower intensive on both fronts to do it. But perhaps guarding your home region, against a half a dozen people trying to steal an ESS doesn't require a massive commitment. Maybe, 50, 60 pilots with a bad attitude might be enough.
If you're uninterrupted, certainly. But if you've got 50, 60 dudes with a bad attitude, like trying to protect your home region, that's a whole region to try and protect and take the ISK yourself. Whereas all it takes is one other pilot to go in there and start taking this stuff. You can steal a billion ISK in 15 minutes. If you've just got one fleet in your home area, you're still going to lose stuff, even if that one fleet's able to protect whoever their particular thief is.
Yep. And I can also see some clever thieves, for lack of a better term, of, you know, we're going to send in, team A on one part of, this region so that notice, because it's a region wide notice that someone's hacking an ESS. If a response fleet does go there, well, now we start on the other side.
Indeed.
So that could be some fun gameplay.
It'll be depend on how you want to scale it, right? I mean, that's I would totally agree. That's one of the neat things about a mechanic like this is that you know it invites a lot more creative gameplay, and it invites opportunity for new ways to attack your enemy, financially, or just to pull in a fight or whatever. So absolutely, I'm excited to see how long people figure this out. If there's any new fleet comps that happen because of it, if there's something always that is like, wow, never saw that coming. Always something like that happens. I don't know where it'll go. Fleet comp is kind of what I'm guessing a little bit, or maybe fleet size, or you would just attack a whole region. So you take 60 people and you divide them up across the 10, 12 regions, and you just attack it all at once. I mean, I don't know where it's going to go. It's going to be I'm kind of excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, one of the guys in chat, BKM, he's a low sec pilot, and he mentions in there, he says, kind of hopes there won't be a loads of camping. My question on that to him is obviously by whom? If it's you guys, if it's the low sec guys camping where those sites spawn, I can see that as some fun, or potentially sending their own folk in to run the site while they guard it. But there's there's definitely some potential give and take. But I personally don't think, with the exception of big low sec entities, I can't see someone camping at an area to run them.
Really? Because I would suspect that's exactly what I would do if I was living in Losec. I would say, hey, this constellation, it's a bit of a dead end, or maybe I know these particular choke points, stick some alts in there, and now I know everyone who comes in and goes out. A thought just crossed my mind. Do we know what's required to run these sites? It takes 3 people, right? It's instance PvP, or instance PvE, excuse me. So if the person fills up all 3 of the slots, nobody else can come in. You just have to sort of ambush them on their way in or on their way out. Theoretically, it would be very easy to tell, okay, this group of players is going to run an ESS site to try and get one of these keys. We're going to catch them on their way out. We're going to catch them on the next gate, what have you.
I guess, and I'm speaking for BK, but and I probably shouldn't, but let's just hypothetically say he's in a actual 30 to 35 heartbeat low sec group, which is small. That's probably not going to control a constellation to run the sites if Snuff says we want it. That's what my point was I was trying to get to.
I see. Yeah, BK also mentions that he's mostly an indie guy, so he's worried about disruption of his regular gameplay. If everyone's in here trying to PvP, he might be a unintended casualty.
So what I spent a little bit of time in LowSec here and there, various over the years, and my impression of LowSec is that there is not a lot of pockets, not a lot of dead ends. There's a few here and there. They're rare, where there's literally just one in and out with 5 or 6 systems behind you. There's often multiple entrances to the area. There's usually conduits from a high sec to a high sec, or a low sec region to a low sec region. That's usually what I find in low sec. So I think, not to put you on the spot, Artimus, but I think it's going to be a little harder to just kind of camp something out because of that.
Fair enough.
But I'm sure every once in a while there's a place for sure. I know there's one in Metropolis. There's certainly one, but when you start looking at the low sec maps, and I think they did that kind of on purpose in gameplay, and I think faction warfare for sure takes advantage of that, where you can kind of fly and live around in the low sec and it's kind of fairly what's the word I'm looking for, fluid, right? It's
Hmm.
just like in high sec, there's not a lot of high sec pockets or corners. There's usually multiple entrances. Null sec is where you do get this kind of one in and out, and then you get like 10, 12, systems in behind like one entrance choke point thing. Uh, but they're there, and if they are there, then I think absolutely what you're saying is that's how I would attack that, and I would say that's where I'm going to go, and I'm going to make that pocket. I'm going to go find a pocket because I think you're right. If you can see who's coming and going, in either camping it to get keys or camping it to prevent key collection, and go get your own keys in the background, right? Like I was saying, kind of lock down an area to get keys. Um, that's how I would probably approach it.
Yeah, and also that does a couple of things. That not only allows you the chance to cordon it off so that your folks can run the sites, but also lost my train of thought because I was reading Bjorn B's here, visiting in the and he was asking, do we know the ship type limits on the low sec sites?
I do not know that off of the top of my head. Bjorn, while we've got you here, I'm very curious. Are there any fleets planned to go and do some heists while we look up the info that you asked for? I know myself and probably many of our listeners would be interested in joining in.
See if we get an answer there. I was cruising the map. I mean, there's a few pockets here and there. Not to harp on the pockets, they are there. Some of them are fairly big, but it's going to be neat to see how they do it. All right, so Bjorn says yes, he's going to
Yeah.
run some.
And that's the sort of thing that I'm super excited for, because I would imagine the sort of fleet that Bjorn could put together, or Snap, who's the Russian streamer whose name I always forget, ran for the CSM. I think he's on the CSM, iBeast.
iBeast, yeah.
He does those similar fleets as well. Like, I would imagine the streamers are going to be making bank when these changes happen. I would imagine it's going to be very successful.
I guess the one thing, and obviously I have not popped onto test server to check it out, but like hypothetically, let's say I run the site with two of my buddies. We get the key. We're trying to sneak out, and Rundle pops me as I'm trying to get out. Does that key drop as loot, or is it gone?
I think
Or
it's
does it
loot in your cargo.
Yeah,
or
if
does it
it's in your
follow
cargo, it's
standard,
loot.
or does it follow standard loot mechanic?
If it's in your cargo, as I understand it, it's going to become loot. From the looks of things, CCP is rather vague in terms of what they've announced about the anomalies so far. So we could head to CC, do some tests, see what we can get in and what we can't. But if they're being vague about it, then I would imagine there's the possibility that they change things in order to either spice things up or based on player feedback. So I think we'll just have to wait and see tomorrow when this hits TQ to see what they commit to in terms of ship limitations going into these low sec encounters.
I know one of the things I like about that, and maybe this is just me, but by them not releasing like tons of information, it's not solved before it hits the live server. Folks can't have everything nailed down. Here's our comp. Here's how we're going to do it. And so there's still guesswork, or not guesswork, because we got way too many smart people for that. Um, but they're going to experiment to figure out the best way for their group to do it. And that's fun gameplay for me.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I really genuinely hope that there are enough sites around that there are enough keys that keys aren't the limiting factor. Or if there are, then they're the limiting factor because people are struggling to complete these sites. What I'd like to see is that the people who make the most money from this event aren't necessarily the big N+1 null blocks, but rather the smart players who are experimenting and in the game and trying again and losing and then trying again, and eventually they're sort of figuring it out and they're just progressing their gameplay faster than everyone else. That is the kind of player that I would love to see profit massively off of these changes, rather than just, okay, null block XYZ gets to lock down their region, collect a crap ton of ISK, and then go back to their regularly scheduled business.
Right. And don't forget, right? There's 8 keys, and the keys that drop are actually, it's a key to a region, right? And so you have to be even somewhat strategic in where you're going to go get the key. You can't just randomly go to a low sec system. I guess you can, but then you got to follow the key to the region, right? So if you want to target one of these regions that has really big banks, Tribute and Vale, and I can't remember the other one, OSA, right? So you're going to have to figure out where those keys drop, which is going to make it even busier in those low sec systems that correspond to those regions. And so there's consequences, there's choices to be made, as often as always is in Eve, right? So, and I think my understanding is they're going to follow the same ship types, right? Which is the cruiser, battleship, right? It's the ESS rules. So you're going to have to get there in a cruiser, a battle cruiser, or a battleship. So cruiser time, more than likely, for most of these people. It's not frigates and destroyers.
Yeah, and so you definitely have to commit something to the field. We aren't going to be seeing interceptors running around and then just running away. We may see a little bit of the. I know when the ESSs came out, it was semi-popular for people to run around in very fast, very slippery stabbers. And so they'd just be faster than anything else that could come into the ESS field. They'd link up to it. People would have multiple alts spread out throughout a region. And whatever they could steal, they'd get. If somebody came in to contest them, they would just run away and move on to the next one. But because they're fighting against a sort of centralized defense fleet, sure, the defense fleet can run off one stabber, but they can't run off the 5 others. Hopefully, with the complexity of these sites and how difficult it seems like they're going to be to run, the price of the keys is going to be such that you don't want to waste a key running away because you're in a solo stabber who doesn't want to fight. You want to come in and really protect the investment that you put on field in order to steal this ISK.
Yeah.
That would be nice to see.
Well, it's only three. It's only 3 people who can go into it, but you can have a bigger fleet, and you can have interceptors and all the other stuff outside, waiting to tackle anyone who's coming in to prevent you. Or I mean, that's the complexity of this, is that there's a lot of other supplemental and secondary gameplay that goes along with just the robbing of the ESS, just like it is, even now, right? With the normal ESS.
Well, yeah, one of the things I found the link to that on the ESS and I posted it. But that it's got that 75-kilometer radius around the structure.
Right.
With inside there, no warping, no micro jump, no micro warp drives, no cloaking, no sinos, and the last one, no filaments. So you can't grab the cache and filament to Pochven. You got to get out of that. You got to get out of that area.
You have to get out of that bubble first, right? Bring your afterburner, fit cruisers, try and get out. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I think, again, it's going to scale to what the commitment and the size is that you're going to want to put in, and the effort you're going to want to put in, risk versus reward, and choices. Do you want to have a big rolling fleet? Do you want to have a small little, hit and run? Are you trying to, camp a bit of an area and start a fight? I don't know. I find this is the sort of gameplay in Eve that I find that I'm actually in awe of and a little bit jealous of, because it's the people who are way smarter than me in the game figure this stuff out so fast. I just like watching the process of gamers figuring out a game. That to me is one of the more exciting elements. I've said it different ways, but that's really what it is. I just love the way that Eve players dissect this up, figure it out, and really find unique and interesting ways to have engaging gameplay.
That's interesting. We kind of alluded to part of that earlier, but it's actually in that blog, that dev blog or release, where it says, for those wanting the nitty gritty details, you have to wait until the feature is live and log in to discover it. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think some people were talking about this wasn't on SISI, right? They did not put this on the test server in this case, right? Is that what? Is that
Other
what?
than
Space Gamer's saying?
the the new ESS, mechanic, you can log in to do that, but the sites to get the keys are the big question mark on a part of it. It
Right,
looks
right.
like.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've ever logged into the test server myself. So, yeah, I don't think I've never even
Never?
downloaded the client. Never,
Not
never
the
once.
test server at all?
Ever once. I've never downloaded the client. I've never, nope.
Rundle, do
I,
you do abyssal sites or anything like that? Have you ever
I'm
engaged
shitty
with
as
that?
fuck on those things. I'm horrible. Yeah, I never do those either. Nope.
Oh
Hey,
man.
I stick with the definite low level abyssals myself, and no, I haven't. I have downloaded and been on the test server, but to be honest, it's been years. So yeah, I'm kind
So
of clueless.
for the uninitiated in the audience, the Singularity server, often referred to as SISI, is a second server for EVE Online. It's not a real server, so to speak. Losses on the server don't particularly matter because just about everything is available on the market for 100 ISK. If you need ISK on the CC server, buy a super expensive ship for 100 ISK, self-destruct it, get an insurance payout, do whatever. It's great for CCP to use to test new features. They've put some recent features such as these ESS changes on there, as well as many other things over the years. It's also been useful for players over time to practice with engaging in various elements of the game. There are certain combat arenas on the Singularity server where players can PvP each other and practice there. There are also areas where you can go out into nullsec and test out new nullsec sites. I asked Rundle specifically about abyssal sites because that's where a lot of testing happens for, okay, you've got a new setup, you want to see if it's going to survive an abyssal arena. Let's go in and try it on CC first. That way the loss doesn't break your bank. And you can sort of do your testing there. So it's certainly a very valuable resource, both to us, the players, in terms of that testing, but also to CCP in terms of letting people engage with their content, look for bugs, do QA and stuff like that. But there's a balance there, which I think CCP is playing off of with these particular changes, where they're saying, hey, we know that you all want to come in here and sort of solve these problems where the loss doesn't matter. And we are explicitly not going to let you do that, or at least not going to let you do it to the extent that you have in the past, which I am personally a fan of that philosophy.
Absolutely. And it fits my gameplay because I don't go there. So come learn where I'm going to learn, which is live. Yeah, I get the value of it. I've just never. I think that's partially why I like watching people figure out the game, is because I also rely on it. I do rely on other people kind of figuring out some of the stuff. I'm pretty busy in general in my life, and when I play, I I just want to come in and sit down and do the things that I know how to do. And if there's new stuff in the game, I don't just jump in and start doing that new stuff right away. I kind of give it a bit of time, then I learn it. Abyssals, clearly. I mean, I've run, I think, 5 abyssals. I've succeeded on 2 and lost a ship in 3. So I think it's about where I've been. That's about my total, and that's the total number of abyssals. I got hundreds of these damn, whatever they're the little, I don't even know what they're called, the filaments or the little, abyssal keys or whatever, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly one way to play the game. Throughout phases of my EVE career, I've also done a similar thing. I'm in one of those now where I'm not out there experimenting. I'm letting others experiment, then post a tutorial, and maybe I'll go follow that.
Right.
But I would also mention that there is a lot of profit to be had if you're the first one to figure something out.
Absolutely.
With the
Absolutely.
abyssals, when that stuff first launched, whenever there's anything new with Triglavians, the first people to figure it out are the ones who are making absolute bank off of the changes. And to a similar note, I genuinely think and hope that these ESS sites are going to be a similar thing, where you are willing to risk enormous sums of ISK on the ships that you put into these low sec sites and hoping that you can escape low sec once you've got your keys. Because if you are the first one to get keys and to go out and make these heists, there's a lot of ISK to be had.
Oh yeah, there's always a small asterisk after, a lot of my statements like this, which is I just play it the way I like to play it. I am not saying I am playing Eve the right way. I'm just playing Eve my way, which is one of the most fantastic things about Eve, is that there's so many ways to play, and it's usually very tailored to you, the pilot. Of course, there's optimal ways or better ways. But I take the approach that I almost don't care. I just want to play and do the thing. And if I fail, I fail. If I succeed, I succeed. And if I succeed in the most absurd fit, then it's even a better story for me. Um, right? Oh, and if I die, then okay. I mean, it's space pixels and some space money. I'm not. I don't have a lot of money, but I've played for a long time, so over the years I've amassed at least enough where um, I can pump the brakes fast enough and not be on an abyssal test and not be space poor in 5 tries, right, or 6 tries. I can pump the brakes and be like, okay, I need to go do a little more learning. I just I lost 100 million and only gained 30 in whatever loot. Okay,
Shoot,
Yeah.
I'm
I
going in the wrong
consider,
direction with that one.
I don't know, for me, that's success.
Yeah, right. I'm going in the wrong direction with that, but so yeah, I read it was just as a side note on one of the YouTube. Someone made a comment that I'm the type of person who is ruining Eve, and I kind of had to laugh at that comment. If you're listening, I'm very sorry, but I had to laugh at that comment because I don't do anything to ruin Eve other than to play the game. I love talking about it. I think I have many years of experience. I have a lot of stories, but I don't try to ever claim that necessarily that my way is the right way. That to me is so anti-Eve that there's just so many ways to play. I like to
Yeah.
watch how other people solve it, and I might take their advice. I might be like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna go in, a Drake and do abyssals just because I want to see, if I can."
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've,
If they even,
yeah,
I
and
don't
I
even know if
think that,
battle cruisers are allowed
Rundle,
to.
yeah, I was about to say you're not going to get a Drake
Yeah,
during
yeah, yeah. I just
missiles, right?
realized battle cruisers can't go in. Sorry, Nick. I talked over you because I realized, yeah, I can't even take a damn battle cruiser in. But
nah, no worries, man. But I find that a lot of folks use the term min maxer as you know, a derogatory
right,
term, which I
right, right.
don't, because I find them folks endlessly fascinating. But I don't play that way, and for me personally, I'm very much, you know, got to find what works for my particular play style. Because I had somebody telling me that this was the optimal fit to run a level 4, high sec, mission, combat mission. And I was like, what do you mean I can't take my demos in there? Oh, yes, I can. And, so I did it, had to figure it out how to do it for myself. Is it slower? Oh, heck yeah, a lot slower. But dang, is it fun and engaging to do it that way?
Yeah, and especially some of my fondest memories, and maybe this is just looking back with rose tinted glasses, but when I first started playing Eve, and so skill points and what you can fly, it's not just you can fly whatever the best option is, because you may not have the skill points to pilot it. Maybe you can't use blasters. Maybe you can't use heavy assault cruisers. So I remember spending hours pouring through YouTube videos and forum comments and pulling up PIFA, and the in game fitting tool didn't even exist back then, trying to figure out, okay, I want to run level 4 missions because I need that ISK, but I don't have the skill points to fly the battleships that everybody says are what can run level 4 missions. So, what can I do with the skill points that are available to me in order to make this ISK? And so, I think that even when you have a portion of the game that has existed for a long period of time, there's going to be plenty of newer players or plenty of players who may be focused on a different area of game. Maybe they focused on industry for a while or what have you, who are coming in with limited skill points, and they have to min-max in that aspect of what can they fly versus what is everybody saying is the best way to do the thing. Plus, I mean, don't forget about fun.
Yeah, it it comes and goes. It just depends on what hits my fancy, right? We're talking about PIFA. I played so long now. EFT was the real big one, EFIT, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I used to love fitting ships, and it was all around what I could fit and what I thought I wanted to try. And I was trying to maximize, whatever it was I was trying to maximize. I liked putting ships together and going out, and I didn't care. I wasn't at the point looking for validation from the rest of the community, like you could have gotten 300 more effective hit points, and what about filling this hole or that hole there, and uh, you know I was trying to just do what I wanted to do with the things I had, which I it was a part of the game. It's just part of the game. Fitting ships is fun. I've learned more, and I've learned the value because I think the game has been tuned to be much more tuned towards the min max aspect, like in terms of NPC, in terms of ratting, you can't have different holes in your shields or your armor. You have to make sure you have the right ammo and stuff. And there was many years where I didn't even pay attention to any of that stuff. Sometimes I
I'm
was successful, other times I wasn't. I just had fun with it.
I'm over here cracking up because where you're talking about a resistance hole,
Right.
and I remember distinctly when I was fairly new to the game, and I was trying to run. I still remember the damn mission, but that's besides the point. Um, and one of my new court mates going, you got a kinetic hole, and my response was, "What's a hole?" I had no clue
Right.
what they were even talking about. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was just a riot.
Fun little side story, Drake's, right? Caldari ships have the classic EM hole, right? So we used to put together like Caldari fleets where we purposely didn't plug the EM hole and we just maxed all the other resists. And purposely did that to see if we could survive and if the other side, whoever we fought or could find to fight, managed to swap to EM damage ammo or not. And you would think, in this game where people will be like, oh, go to the Molnir or go to this or whatever, no, there's so many times people just had Scourge, or they had something else, they had some other ammo type loaded, or whatever we were fighting, and they wouldn't swap over, and we flew with like 0 EM shield resist time and time again. It was a lot of fun to just do weird shit like that.
Oh my God,
And
Rochambeau in chat just wrote, "Can be fun to fit ships
Yeah,
using whatever spare parts you got laying around."
absolutely.
I still remember mixing guns on and having it explained in length and detail to me of why that was not necessarily a good idea. But yeah, that just again brought back some fun memories.
it hurts so much to hear about the stories you guys are telling. It is just I was never the kind of player to mix guns or to use spare parts. Like if I had to use spare parts, I would use spare parts. But yeah, it hurts. It physically hurts to hear about the things that you guys were doing. I do want to circle back to the fitting ideas that you were doing though with your drakes.
Right.
Back when I flew in wormhole space, we would fly heavy armor. It was the flavor of the month for years in wormholes, and you'd fly heavy armors, typically T3 cruisers, also occasionally Balgorns and such, but there were mass limits. You could only take a certain amount. I flew in low class wormholes, so no caps. And every single time when I flew a Balgorn and when I flew a Legion, and I did my best to do this for the rest of my courtmates as well and recommend it to them, is that you would want to fit a ship scanner. And a lot of people would say, what's the ship scanner for? And the first use, the use that we most often used it in those ships, is to see what the cap is on whatever ship you're trying to newt. Because when you're newting a ship, step one, get rid of all its cap. But then once all its cap is gone, you don't need as much nuke power on it. You just need enough to overcome its recharge. So you can then use some of your neutralization amount, stick it on other ships, and let it be useful. But you have to know, okay, what is the cap level of the ship I'm trying to nuke? But then the second use, which I personally thought was more valuable, is I can see what the opponent's ships are fit with. I can see what EWAR they've got in their mids. I can see what their resistance holes are by looking at what their lows slots are. It is incredible the utility that you get from having a ship scanner. And if you're the kind of pilot who's only ever flown in a nullsec fleet where everybody's got their doctrines and everybody's got spies, so you know what your enemy is fit with before you go up against them. If you go
Right.
into a different sort of arena and you can ship scan somebody to see how they're fit before fighting them, it is a massive advantage. I'm still
No
amazed
kidding.
to this day that people don't fly around with alts with ship scanners just to ship scan the guy you're about to fight to know if you can take him. Like, it is such a huge tactical advantage.
Yeah. People would have figured out we weren't plugging our EM hole and stuff. So for those listening to this on after, like just in podcast style, we got on the screen, we got the Eve workbench, which back when I was talking about the Drake and all this other stuff earlier on, there wasn't a website like this that listed this. Nowadays, I use Eve workbench all the time. It's a fantastic site to just go and be like, hey, how should I fit a Gila today? How should I fit a Drekovac? What's a good whatever ship? And to the point where there's almost too many choices sometimes. and then you're kind of a little bit back to shit. What do I do here? Because there's some crazy fits on there, but yeah, we could probably go on and on about talking about fits and play styles and ship fitting and all that sort of stuff. I want to try and keep the show to about an hour today. We should probably start wrapping up here a little bit. Is there any outstanding items that you want to cover, Artimus or Nick? I know there's an announcement for tomorrow's show. I'll cover that. Or is there anyone in the audience who has any last minute questions? We can maybe do that. But Artimus, I'll start with you.
I do think it's hilarious. Space Skater in the chat just mentioned, watch the ESS Keys be defended by diamond rats. If you haven't seen the work that Satonia did with befriending the diamond rats in nullsec and then baiting, I think it was Providence, into coming and fighting with the diamond rats, it is hilarious, and I highly recommend it. Just do a quick Google search, Satonia diamond rats PvP, and you will have the time of your life.
Awesome.
Oh, that is definitely on my list now.
How about you, Nick? You got anything?
I got nothing, brother.
Nothing. All right. So I'm just going to a couple things here. I know the chat. Thank you very much for participating. There's been a lot of potential war conversation going on. So clearly, the announcements of the weekend and what's happening in the war has got it's a bit of an uprise of interest and stuff. And so tomorrow's show is going to be Matterall doing what leaders say. He's going to do breakdown of Norris, the fraternity Sunday address. So Matterall is going to do that. So tune in tomorrow to get a little bit more of your war fix. And of course, tomorrow is patch day, so the ESS, and there's going to be maybe some other things in the patch. So tomorrow's show will cover those things. And let's see, I think that's pretty much it. Doesn't look like there's any other questions. So we'll just call that a wrap for Talking Stations for today. Thank you very much for listening, everyone.
All right. Take care, all. And Wormus, I'll find you in space, brother.